The Queen's final words begin to echo in the final years of her life. Aretha Franklin began doing something she had rarely done throughout her legendary career. She started speaking out. Known as the Queen of Soul, Aretha had spent most of a year, her life letting her voice speak through music, not controversy. She was elegant, private, and selective about what she shared with the world. But behind that strong, regal presence was a woman who had dealt with many slights, betrayals, and disappointments, some from the very artists she once admired or called friends. As her health declined and the world began to reflect on her legacy, Aretha started naming names, not in tabloids or flashy interviews, but in quiet conversations, letters, and public statements filled with meaning. This wasn't gossip. It was about pride, about protecting a career built over 6 decades, and about making sure her truth was told before she was gone. For Aretha, respect wasn't just a song, it was the foundation of her life. And when someone crossed that line, she didn't forget. Whether the insult came from a stage, a studio, or a careless comment in the press, Aretha remembered every word. And now, for the first time, we explore 7 of the names that made her list, not out of hatred, but out of deep personal hurt. Beyonce, a crown misplaced. It all started with a single sentence at the 2008 Grammy Awards. Beyonce was on stage introducing the legendary Tina Turner. With all the grace and excitement in the world, she called Tina the Queen. It seemed harmless to most people, just a sign of admiration from one star to another. But for Aretha, who had been called the Queen of Soul for over 40 years, the comment hit differently. That title wasn't just a nickname, it was a symbol of everything she had fought for. She had earned it through gospel churches, civil rights marches, and chart-topping records that changed music forever. To hear someone pass it along so casually, even in a different genre, felt like disrespect. Aretha didn't call Beyonce out by name, but the response was swift. She released a statement calling the comment a cheap shot and a lapse in respect. It shook the music world. Some thought Aretha was being overly sensitive, but others understood. This was about more than ego. It was about erasure, about not giving credit where it was due. After that, Aretha refused to attend any event Beyonce headlined and made it clear behind the scenes that she considered the younger star talented, but thought she had forgotten to show proper respect. Ray Charles, from Harmony to Hurt Aretha, Franklin and Ray Charles were supposed to be a dream team, a duet made in soul heaven. Back in the 1970s, they planned a big performance together on national television. Rehearsals went well. They laughed, sang, and everyone was excited to see these two giants share the stage. But when the cameras came on, Ray started to change the script. He added new parts to the music, switched up the rhythm, and left Aretha trying to catch up. On screen, it looked playful, but behind the scenes, Aretha was upset. She felt he had made her look unprepared on purpose. Later, she found out he had laughed about it with the producers, saying, "She's great, but not quick on her feet." That joke wasn't funny to her. It was insulting. It made her feel small in front of millions. After that, she cut all ties. No more duets, no more performances, not even small collaborations. Aretha never spoke about it in interviews, but those close to her said she felt deeply betrayed. She believed Ray had taken their moment and turned it into a stunt for himself. To her, that wasn't just unprofessional, it was personal. Luther Vandross, Clash of the Titans. In the early 1980s, Aretha was working on a big comeback. Clive Davis, her producer, paired her with rising star Luther Vandross, who was known for his smooth style and sharp production. At first, it seemed like the perfect match. Aretha brought her power and passion. Luther brought his polish and precision. But trouble came quickly. Luther was a perfectionist. He wanted every note just right. Aretha, on the other hand, sang from instinct. She didn't like being told how to perform. During a late-night session, Luther reportedly told her to stop over-singing. That was the breaking point. Aretha stood up and told him, "Nobody tells the Queen how to reign." She walked out and never worked with him again. The album Jump to It became a hit, but the sessions were tense. Friends said every harmony was a battle, and Aretha later said he made great music but made it miserable to make. It wasn't just a creative difference. It was about control, respect, and the way she believed a woman of her status should be treated. Dionne Warwick, Keith Richards, and Eminem, a triple disrespect. 3 more names on Aretha's list came from very different worlds: soul, rock, and rap. First, Dionne Warwick. At Whitney Houston's funeral, Dionne said Aretha had been expected to perform, but didn't show up. What she didn't say was that Aretha was too sick to attend. Years later, Aretha released a 5-page letter accusing Dionne of spreading lies. Their feud wasn't new. It had been simmering for decades, but this moment reopened the wound. Then there was Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. In an interview, he said soul music died with Otis Redding, adding that Aretha's still around, but it's not the same. To Aretha, this wasn't just wrong, it was erased. She clapped back in a radio interview saying, "Some people confuse loud guitars with depth." And finally, Eminem, the Detroit rapper. Aretha expected love from someone who also came from Detroit, but Eminem never acknowledged her in his music. No shout-outs, no samples, nothing. To Aretha, that silence said everything. She felt ignored by a man who had built his career in a city she helped define. When asked what she thought of him, she replied with one word: noise. Billy Joel, a piano, and a problem. The last name on Aretha's list came from someone she respected, until one rehearsal changed everything. In the early 2000s, a joint concert between Aretha and Billy Joel was being planned. She liked his music, thought he respected the classics, and agreed to a rehearsal. But during a break, Billy made a joke. "Come on, Ray, take a shot of whiskey and lighten the mood." It was meant to be funny, but it wasn't. Aretha didn't drink, never had. She felt the comment was disrespectful and unprofessional. She quietly packed her things and left. The concert was canceled, and Billy's name never came up again in her world. Later, she told a friend, "He plays piano like a poet but talks like a fool." That moment proved that even admiration couldn't protect someone from crossing her line. In Aretha's world, respect was everything. Once it was broken, there was no going back. And as she approached the end of her life, she wanted the world to know, not to settle scores, but to set the record straight. Because her story wasn't just about music, it was about truth, a lifetime of quiet strength. For most of her career, Aretha Franklin was not one to chase headlines or stir drama. She came from a time when dignity mattered more than fame, and when silence was often the only form of power a woman could use without being called difficult. But silence has a weight to it, and by the time she reached her 70s, Aretha had carried that weight for too long. She had watched other artists rewrite the history of music, sometimes leaving her name out of conversations she helped start. Younger generations borrowed her style, sampled her songs, and celebrated her influence, yet rarely gave her the space to speak her mind. As she aged, she started to feel the urgency. The world was moving fast, and Aretha knew that memories fade, reputations shift, and truth can be edited if it's not written down. So she began reclaiming her story. With every letter she sent, every statement she released, and every quiet conversation she had, she was shaping her legacy, not just as the Queen of Soul, but as a woman who had spent her life surviving in an industry that rarely showed women of her stature the respect they earned. To her, naming the people who had hurt her wasn't about revenge, it was about history. When respect becomes resistance, the word respect became forever tied to Aretha Franklin, the day she turned Otis Redding's original song into an anthem of power. But for Aretha, respect was never just a chorus. It was a way of life. It meant honoring those who came before you, lifting those who stood beside you, and standing up to those who tried to belittle you. It wasn't enough to have a hit record or a big voice. What mattered most was how you treated people when the spotlight faded. This belief shaped every decision she made. When she refused to perform for certain artists, or skipped awards, shows that didn't recognize her properly, she was sending a message: respect is not optional. Many called her stubborn, some called her cold, but Aretha didn't care. She had learned early on that being quiet and polite would never protect her. Her resistance came in the form of silence, distance, and sometimes, yes, public words that cut deep. But beneath all of that was a woman who believed in fairness. A woman who, after giving the world her heart and her voice, simply asked to be treated with the same dignity she gave to others. Her resistance wasn't about ego. It was about principle. A final encore. Aretha Franklin died on August 16, 2018. Tributes poured in from all corners of the world, from presidents, pop stars, pastors, and people who had danced to her music for generations. But among the flowers and the honors there were whispers too. Whispers about the people she didn't invite to her funeral. Whispers about names left off the guest list. Whispers about final conversations, final letters, final truths. Some were shocked. Others, who knew Aretha well, were not surprised. She had spent her life singing about freedom, but she also believed in boundaries. She forgave, but she never forgot. And as her voice faded, she chose to speak not through song, but through clarity. Her list of 7 wasn't about hate. It was a final encore. A statement to the world that greatness does not mean perfection. That even the most powerful voices have moments of pain, silence, and disappointment. And that telling your story, even the hard parts, is the truest kind of legacy. Because Aretha Franklin wasn't just a singer, she was a force, and forces don't just fade, they echo.